I love this school.
Star Trek is back with its latest new Trek outing, Starfleet Academy. A follow-up or a spin-off from Star Trek Discovery set 800 years in the future, depending on your point of view. Now, the first two episodes have dropped already, so in this video I'm going to break down what exactly happened in these episodes, give some thoughts on them and where this show might be going. But first of all, as always, I'm Al, this is the Geek in Review. Thanks for taking the time to choose to watch the video, and if you haven't done it already, please subscribe to the channel. And if you make it all the way to the end of the video, leave a like as well. So as I said, I'm only covering the general plot in these first two episodes. I'm going to be doing some follow-up videos that go into more details about certain aspects of the plot, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss them. And as always, I want to hear what you guys thought about this double opener, so let me know in the comments below. But let's get to it. So first of all, we get a brand new Star Trek intro for the 60th anniversary, featuring all the ships and the sounds, which I have to say, I kind of pretty much enjoyed. Now remember, this Starfleet Academy show is set in the new Trek Discovery verse, so we get a quick catch up on what the history of the burn and the event that led to the crippling of Starfleet and basically the collapse of the Federation in the last 120 years. They do mention the long-term effects of the burn and how it's worked out over this last century or so for some of these characters and societies, but they did miss the bit about what caused it, which was an upset Kelpian child in a nebula, and I kinda wonder why. The show starts with an introduction to the main character, Caleb, as a young child learning about the stars with his mother, played by She-Hulk's Tatiana Maslany, and they're looking, or at least hoping, for a new homeworld. We then meet Braca, played by Academy Award winner Paul Giamatti, who helped him survive in a post-burn world, and it turns out wasn't such a good guy after all. They are on a Federation outpost, and this is where we're introduced to the other Academy Award winner here, Holly Hunter, who at this point in the timeline is a captain in Starfleet. This scene is set about 15 years before the main plot, and I'll get to that in a minute. But this is a trial of Caleb's mother and Braca, both of them being sent to prison after the crimes that they committed, and Braca isn't a fan of Starfleet, nor is Caleb's mother actually warning Caleb not to really trust them. Holly Hunter's character, Nala Akai, which I might be pronouncing wrong, arranges for Caleb to go to school on Bajor and promises to keep him safe. But the young child manages to escape and then goes on the run, and the story picks up 15 years later. Jump forward to a penal colony where older Caleb is now about to become a permanent resident. He manages to overpower the Romulan guards and commandeers the shuttle, as he still turns out that he's looking for his mother after all this time. And this seems to be the entire mystery box or mystery person element of the show. New Trek loves that since Discovery Season 2, and there's no trace of her when he asks the computer to search for her once he takes command of the shuttle. It then jumps to Bajor, where now retired Captain Aki seems to be working at a preschool, because remember, this is a show about kids going to school, and they're really hammering that home. We get the first crossover from Discovery, Admiral Vance showing up to recruit her back to Starfleet to help lead the first class of cadets in over 100 years since the burn, and because she's a Lanfinite, that's the species that was introduced in Strange New Worlds with Pelia, who, by the way, I've done a video on. If you want to watch that, I'm going to leave a link at the end of this video and in the description as well that gets into it. Check it out if you haven't done it already. But basically, Holly Hunter resigned because of what happened with Caleb and his mother, so it does seem that Caleb is going to be the main focus of the story going forward. He's also the reason that Aki decides to rejoin Starfleet, and Vance basically gives her the whole "we need to get this guy on board, Starfleet's a good thing" pitch, because apparently he's got a one-of-a-kind mind, but they don't really get into that too much. They arrive at what is going to be the Starfleet Academy, but it's not the building that we've seen before in San Francisco. It's a ship called the USS Athena, which, on the inside at first glance, actually, if you ask me, looks like a mall in Las Vegas. Once they're on board, we get introduced to number one, the half Klingon, half Jem'Hadar Laura Thok, who is, let's be honest, a little bit over the top, and I've got a lot of thoughts on this character that I'm going to do in another video. So again, subscribe so you don't miss it.
Interspecies vomit monitor and 200 push-ups. Now! I said now! Right?
But making her seem to haze these new cadets is apparently a good thing. What did you guys think about that in the intro that we got here? Because we also met Jaden, the half Klingon, half Bajoran as well, and I do think it might not have been Linus from Discovery, but it certainly was a member of his species. Now, the big draw for a lot of Star Trek fans in this show is the holographic Doctor is back to doing what he does best, being a holographic Doctor. So Robert Picardo is back in the role after Voyager finishing about 24-25 years ago at this point, and they do explain why the character has aged later on. But it seems that after almost 800 years, he still doesn't have a first name, and he doesn't actually really give any backstory on what he's been up to for all these centuries. So it makes me think, and at least hope, we're going to get a Doctor-focused episode somewhere along the line, but as always, we're going to have to wait and see. We also meet the bridge crew of the USS Athena, who I hope get more development than the bridge crew of Discovery got in 5 seasons. Doctor does get a bit of a proper introduction later on in the episode, but we still don't get any history or name for him, and yet they really need to address that sooner than later. I know after 7 years of Voyager, and the fact that that show is now over 30 years old means that when they do give him a name, a lot of people aren't going to be happy with it, but I think they really need to commit to this because it's about time, don't you think? We also get introductions to other characters, Sam and Genesis, and yeah, Sam seems very childlike at first, and we do learn that she is a hologram that is only a few months old. Caleb, though, isn't really on mission, and of course tries to contact his mother, but she hasn't reached out to him since escaping, so he essentially leaves her a voicemail hoping that she's going to check in. Back on the bridge of the Athena, they detect an anomaly near the Badlands and decide to investigate. And this is a scene that was shown right before the show released. It's basically one that's been cut down and condensed. It's a much longer event in the episode than I would have expected. But Brackett is back and attacks the Athena, and he's just lying in wait after picking up Caleb's distress signal to his mother. What exactly the relationship is between Brackett, Caleb and his mother, I think that's going to play out over the seasons, but I really don't see how they can sustain another mystery box thing after about 3 or 4 seasons of Discovery doing that, and Strange New Worlds, which I've kind of given up on, has probably done it as well. The attack, Thok is injured and it's up to the plucky cadets to try and save her. But Caleb, being the hero of the story, knows how to stop the attack on the ship somehow, but again, they don't really go into any detail or explain what's special about this unique mind of his. Also, when Brackett introduces himself, the captain isn't exactly shocked that he's out of prison. But it turns out he's not there for Caleb, or he's not there to settle a score. He just wants components of the ship's warp core to sell, which, yeah, doesn't feel like it's going to pay off in any way, shape or form. And this is when the episode starts to really fall apart for me. Because when you think about it, what they're trying to do here is reenact the bit in The Wrath of Khan after Khan's crippled the Enterprise with the Reliant to get the Genesis device, but it's just not executed very well at all. In fact, the way that it's written and the way that it's sort of directed and performed feels like it's very light-hearted as opposed to being an absolutely tense, serious event that this ship is now completely disabled and at this guy's mercy. He can do whatever he wants, but all he does is have this really weird back and forth conversation with the cat. There's no tension at all here, and I'm not sure if it is supposed to be serious or funny, and the captain seems that she's got no real cards to play. But as I said, Caleb has the answers, and none of the experienced Starfleet officers with literally years and years and light years of experience can come up with a plan, but the hero cadet can. Anyway, Brackett beams on board the ship with only a handful of guys, and by the size of the Athena, it seems that there's probably thousands of Starfleet personnel on board, so that's another thing that kind of niggled at me a little bit. In order for Caleb's plan to work, one of the cadets needs to go outside to get samples of the programmable matter attacking the ship, and for some reason they can't send one of the robots that you've seen all the way throughout the first episode going about the ship. But they do manage to save the ship and the day, I guess, until Brackett escapes and then comes back just for Caleb. I mean, he said that he was after components of the warp core, but now he's totally abandoned that idea to have a conversation with this new cadet. And yeah, they really better pay this relationship off later down the line. Athena does destroy his ship, but he manages to get away in an escape pod. But for some reason that I can't fathom, they don't send a shuttle after him or any of the starships that they know that are coming. They just let the bad guy escape because, well, the story has to happen over the rest of the season, I suppose. But the crew and the cadets have saved the day, beaten the bad guy and learned to work as a team, and arrive back on Earth with that song, which I think is a completely terrible idea. We also learn that the captain had a son that was killed in the burn, so I guess that's going to be her trauma going forward, and Caleb's going to fill the role that's missing there in her life. And yeah, she blames herself for his death in the burn, which again, doesn't make sense when you think about it because no one could have seen that event coming, and apparently listening to him would have made everything better at the time. Now that's pretty much episode 1, and I'm going to go straight into episode 2. So if you haven't seen it, this will contain spoilers, but I really want to hear your thoughts on the first episode, particularly all the aspects that I talked about. What did you like? What did you not like? Let me know in the comments below. Now, episode 2 is definitely a bit of a shift compared to the first one. There seems to be a bit of a time jump as it's now a new semester, and it opens with this terrible line from the captain. We also find out that in the absence of Starfleet Academy, Earth now has a war college, and Thok is training the cadets in, again, what is not a great scene.
You'll all stare death in the face as she stares back. Yes! Death has eyes!
Episode 2 is essentially day 1 for these new Starfleet recruits, and it being the first proper episode, we get the actual intro and title sequences, which is pretty good and a lot better than they've done in the 5 years of Discovery, which didn't feel like a Trek intro at all to me. One thing that I wasn't expecting was quite a few references to Star Trek Prodigy. There's more than you might have noticed here on the initial watch, and I might go into that later on, but we get a live action breaker, rock talk species from Prodigy, which as I said, I didn't expect at all, and I think it looked pretty good. We also get an exocomp bot cadet later on, and the exocomps were of course introduced to the Next Generation and then developed in the Lower Decks cartoon or animated show as well. But what did you guys think about that? Did you expect these references to Prodigy and the Lower Decks? Or did you think that show was just going to hang itself on the Next Generation, the movies and the original series? We do get some brief exposition about how the Federation is rebuilding itself and how Beta Z seems to be a key part of this for some reason. The entire story of this episode is the Betazoid delegation coming to Earth to sort of negotiate its reintroduction into the Federation. And yeah, they've made some interesting changes when it comes to the Betazoids, let's just put it that way. Betazoids are also sending a youth delegation because of course they are. Good news, fan favourite Jet Reno is back and teaching in the academy, and I always kind of liked Jet Reno, but I'm not exactly sure about the uniform. Also, the way that Caleb talks to her really pissed me off, and I'm going to get to now, Caleb meets one of the Betazoid delegation, and it's clear that they're going to be setting up a love interest. Whether this is going to be a main character in the series, I don't know yet. The way that the episode ends, it kind of hints that she might be a recurring one, but this is more what I expected from this show. Let's talk about the changes to the Betazoids, because I clearly remember in several episodes of TNG that Betazoids could talk to each other telepathically. But when they arrive on Earth, for some reason, they're using sign language, and I really want to know what your thoughts about that are in the comments below. Get the grand tour of Starfleet Academy, and of course it's Caleb that's a tour guide, so they can set him up with this girl. And the entire meeting of the two powers really seems to hang on these youth delegations, and yeah. Anyway, Caleb is still looking for his mother and doesn't have a clue where to start as he's reached a dead end. But using some star charts from the Betazoids, he manages to get a new lead in about 2 seconds flat. So we're getting destination, mummy issues / mystery box. That does seem to be Caleb's arc for the season. And what's odd about this episode is it's solely focused on Caleb. No one else gets anything else to do, or actually really many lines whatsoever, which does feel like a waste to me. The characters weren't particularly well defined in the first episodes, and it seems that they might not be for a while. I do suspect, kind of, that they might get their own individual episodes, but whether this is just going to be a trauma Trek dump like we've seen before, we'll need to wait and see. But I don't really understand why you briefly introduce the cast of your new Star Trek show in episode 1, then totally ignore 99% of them in episode 2. I didn't think this show was going to make the same mistake that Discovery done, which is solely focusing on a single character, but it does seem that it is going to go down this road. And I really want to know what you guys think about that as well. Because episode 2 feels completely detached from the first episode. It doesn't set anything up for further episodes or pay anything off from the first episode either. The first episode at least had some movement and excitement and stuff going on, but episode 2 feels like it's firmly stuck in the water. And I'm not sure, given the tonal differences between the first 2 episodes, what exactly this show is going to be going forward for the remainder of the season. It establishes that Caleb's mother is still out there, but what is the big twist going to be other than a son and a mother reuniting? What is the mystery box that she's hiding? How is it going to tie into the villain, and how is this all linked? I just don't know, but I want to hear you guys' theories. The episode doesn't even set up the love interest, because later on we find out that she doesn't join Starfleet Academy but decides to join Earth's War College. And to be honest, that's pretty much the main plot of the first 2 episodes of Starfleet Academy. So if you've watched the episodes already, what did you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. I didn't really know what to expect for this show, but I didn't have particularly high hopes. One thing I will say, and I'll get it out the way, is this show looks good. The effects, the sets are all top tier, which makes it even worse because everything else doesn't work, at least for me. It gives us a villain whose setup was heavily focused in the first episode and pretty much forgotten about by episode 2. And the villain wasn't the only thing that was forgotten about, because where the hell was the rest of the cast of the show? We got very brief intros to them in episode 1, but no expansion or focus on anyone else than Caleb in episode 2. And one thing that's odd about the episode 2 as well is there wasn't a B storyline in it, which is usually a sort of classic trope of Star Trek writing going back decades. Because all the marketing for this show, at least to me, seemed to be that it was going to be about all these different people coming together and learning what it was going to be part of Starfleet. And I know it's only the first 2 episodes, but yeah, it just didn't feel like it gelled for me at all. As I said earlier on in the video, I wonder if everyone's going to get their own episode or their own focus going forward, or are they just going to be dancing around this to focus on Caleb and his mystery box mother? The writing is predictably not great, and I know I'm not the target audience for this show. I think it's clearly designed to draw in the 16 to 25s, and I'm not sure how exactly they're going to do that. One thing I will say is it didn't hit me over the head too much with references, at least on a first watch. I was expecting a lot more than there was. Yes, there was a lot of stuff packed in with the names of buildings and the names on walls and things like that, but it could have went a lot more heavier. There are, of course, the odd mentions to Discovery, and we get Vance and Reno pop up, but I don't think it's going out its way to tie itself to anything that it came before, and I think that that's a conscious choice, because forcing people to go back and watch 5 seasons of Discovery might put people off watching the rest of this season. Now, if you've been following this show online, you'll know that the reviews are pretty mixed, and I've got an entire video coming about that to make sure that you don't miss it. And if you didn't notice as well, Alex Kurtzman, the sort of very divisive head of Star Trek for the last decade or so, directed the first episode. And watching it back, I can only imagine the direction he was given to Paul Giamatti, because my God, was he hamming it up and over the top in every scene. I mean, I think that's an understatement, and I think I'm being a little bit nice and generous when I say that. But what did you guys think of Paul Giamatti's performance in that first episode? It felt like there was no stakes at all here, so I wonder what they're going to do with him for the rest of the season and what that backstory exactly is. Also, another thing that I found bizarre is the score. Now, I mentioned earlier on about the San Francisco song, but the score overall didn't really fit into what I'd expect either. Especially when they arrived at Earth, it was just kind of tonally all over the place. Now, I can't play you any clips of the score for copyright reasons, but if you've seen the episodes, let me know what you think. So while I wouldn't say that this was a disaster, I knew that it wasn't going to appeal to me. Now, while I don't necessarily hate New Trek, I'm more disappointed in what they're not doing with it. If you ask me, this is a show you get when you let the theatre kids run Star Trek, and it seems that it's going to follow or fall into what people have come to expect and dislike about New Trek, but as always, we're going to have to wait and see. And generally, that's my feelings on the first 2 episodes of Star Trek Starfleet Academy. It looked absolutely brilliant, but beyond that, there was nothing that had any wide range appeal. Yes, there was a lot of references, but we didn't get any real history on what exactly had happened in the burn. We didn't really get any backstory on any of these characters either, and they didn't even really tie up what happened at the end of Star Trek Discovery either. But as always, if you've made it this far, leave a like on the video, and if you haven't done it already, subscribe to the channel. I really want to know what you guys thought about the first 2 episodes of Starfleet Academy, so let me know in the comments below, or you can reach out to me on Twitter at The Geeks Reviews. As I've said, I've got a few more videos of the first 2 episodes coming, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the channel. And as always, I'm Al. Thanks for watching.